Dennis Josephowski wants to know, does the O3 and ELRS 2.4 gig interfere somehow, and could that cause lower range? In theory, anytime you have another transmitter operating in the same band as yours, there's potential for interference and reduction in range. The O3 does not use 2.4 gigahertz unless you're using the FEV controller, I believe. Blunty, do you agree, disagree, or don't know?
Yeah, 2.4 should only happen if you're using the controller 2. Yes.
Right. So if you're just using the goggles and not the controller, then it's not using 2.4 gig, and there shouldn't be really any chance of interference. And even if they were, you still shouldn't have much interference because ExpressLRS is very good at avoiding interference. Let's see. Patrick Kelly wants to know, is there a way to add delay to a simulator? I wish, Patrick Kelly, I wish that one of the simulator developers would come up with a way that we could add some number of milliseconds of delay to play with people's perception of delay. I don't know of any simulator that does that. So the answer to your question is no, but I do think it's interesting, and I have had that same question myself. Carmody Vita wants to know, how do I learn to fly in tight spaces or indoors? I don't have analog goggles, just DJI. I'm using my Mobula O3. Should I keep trying to use angle mode, learn to hover, and after move to acro? Rates tune are necessary. Carmody Vita, the first thing I would say is, if you're using the O3, make sure you are at 100 frames per second. If you... like my preference is 2.7K, 100 frames per second, 4.3. If you really feel like you want to record in 4K, then set it to 4K, but I think it only goes up to 4K 60. Does it do 4K 100? I don't know, because I don't do 4K. Because I like to fly in 4.3, and 2.7K is the highest the highest resolution that does 4.3. But you want to be on 100 frames per second. I recently did a house fly-through, a real estate style fly-through with a Cinewhoop, and I tried to do it at 4K 30 because I was like, 30 FPS will give me more low light sensitivity. And I literally just could not keep from bashing the walls. I had a lot of trouble, and it was the low frame rate, and I assumed the additional delay. Like, it was bad. And I set it to 2.7K 100, and I could fly. So if you're not at 100 FPS, definitely be at 100 FPS because that'll lower your latency. Lower your rates. I think that for flying indoors, there's no shame in using angle mode. Now, the pros who are doing like real estate fly-throughs or Cinewhoop one-shots flying through a bar or something, they're pretty much all using acro mode. There's no shame in learning in angle mode. And angle mode is really forgiving when you're flying indoors, because in angle mode, when you hit the wall and the quad like moves, it autocorrects. Whereas in acro mode, it doesn't, and you basically crashed before you can even correct yourself. Brandon Beans agrees with me that 03 30 FPS is unflyable for some reason. Yeah, agree. Don't know why, but totally agree. So the other thing you can do is you can lower your rates. Lower your rates. Like, I had my rates at around... I fly 533 rates on most of my cinematic rigs as well as race rigs. And this was the first time that I felt like that was too high of a rate. Like, I wanted even lower rates for doing this house fly through. And the reason was not an inability to control the aircraft. I only tapped the wall one time. And it wasn't because of a lack of control. It was I was doing like an orbit around this big garage, and I swung a little wide just because I was not paying attention to where the air wall was, and I hit the air conditioner, the HVAC unit. So I was completely able to control the quad and not bounce off the walls and fly the route. But it wasn't as smooth as I would have liked. And I really, I tried to make the tiniest stick movements. And I could have benefited from even lower rates. So, yeah. There we go. That's what I would say about that. The answer to your question, how do I learn to fly in tight spaces, is, I'm sorry to say, just practice. Just practice. You have to get stick time. Practicing in the simulator is good. Find a tight environment in the simulator. It can help. We got a question here from Slam Dunk FPV, who asks, why don't paramotors need to be registered or licensed and they do not have height limits? Some have videos flying at 17,000 feet. Why are they allowed to do this, but remote ID is pushed on us? I'm going to tell you the answer, Slam Dunk, and I want to preface this by saying that I will not be going, Plenty, keep me honest, I will not be going on a rant about remote ID, because I know we have to dole those out in doses. But there is an answer to this question. I'm going to tell you the answer. And the answer, I'm not going to argue that it's a good answer. I'm just going to tell you what the reasoning is, and you can decide for yourself. The reasoning is this. If you build an ultralight aircraft like a paramotor, you don't need any licensing at all to fly it. If you build an experimental aircraft, I think it's less than 250 kilograms, you can build just an airplane. And just register it as an experimental airplane and fly it, and people think it's unfair that aircraft carrying people, and in some cases relatively heavy aircraft, I'm not volunteering to have a 249 kilogram aircraft fall on my head, they're allowed to fly without sort of the level of scrutiny that little tiny toy drones get. And I think that the reasoning is, that's interesting. Pause that for a second. Is anybody's resolution dropping down to 144p? People are saying that it's dropping to 144p. Ghost Branch is right. I recently switched to streaming in H.265 instead of H.264.
If you're not dropping any data to YouTube, I don't think there's any problem.
Yeah, I'm clean. I don't know what.
I think it's a YouTube issue. I don't think there's any reason to worry about it.
YouTube just wants you guys to pay for YouTube Premium, so they're effing with your resolution. Okay, continue that train of thought. If you drop down to 144p, just manually change it back. Okay, so the logic behind that decision is that if you are physically flying in your aircraft, you will have a natural incentive not to do dumb, dangerous stuff. Think about it. The whole appeal of a drone is that I can do crazy shit with the drone that I wouldn't do with my own body. And if I crash the drone, oh well. Right? That's the appeal of a drone. What are the appeals? And that extends to, I can fly the drone somewhere like an airport that I shouldn't be at. And ultimately, I can just, look, I'm a flying drone, making trouble for lots of people. And then I just land and turn off my transmitter and take off my goggles and leave into the night, never to be seen. And you can't do that. If you're flying a full-scale aircraft, if you're flying an ultralight, and you are inside the aircraft, if you go somewhere where you're not supposed to be, guess what? You're there. If I land a parachute on the White House lawn, the Secret Service will be able to arrest me. If I fly around an airport in traffic, there's a chance that I will be sucked into a jet engine and die. If I fly over a bunch of people or in some other way fly recklessly, my own life is on the line. And so the reasoning is that those things are less regulated because the people doing those things have an inherent incentive not to do stupid, illegal, dumb, dangerous stuff. And if they do, they probably are only going to do it once. Either because they'll get caught and arrested, or because they'll kill themselves. I shouldn't say those words on stream. They'll die. On the other hand, drones, they're scarier in a way, because you just put the drone up and you go do stupid, dangerous, dumb shit, and then you just power down and no one can find you. And so the FAA's argument is that drones need to be more heavily regulated than like ultralight or experimental aircraft. So that's the logic. And I ain't saying it's right or it's wrong, but I will say this. It's not completely arbitrary. Like a lot of the things about remote ID, and no, we're not going on a remote ID rant. A lot of the things about remote ID like just make no freaking sense and don't really sort of follow from the principles that they're supposed to be derived from. They just shout, safety! And then they just run away and expect you to be like, oh, safety. They said safety. What can I do? But like that principle makes some kind of sense. Anyway.